All right. This is exciting.
Okay.
Yeah.
Good morning, everybody. Yeah, thanks so much for making your time available today. Likewise, to anyone listening to the recording, which we will be sending afterwards. Really appreciate your time today. We've got an hour today. We've got quite a lot to cram in. We're really going to look to make it worth your while. For anyone wondering, there will be a copy of the slide deck sent out today, and some supplementary information will be shared as well. Plus, of course, you'll be shared by details from those of you that I've not spoken to before. So welcome along, everyone. Chris, if it's okay with you, if you don't mind popping to the next slide, we'll just do some brief introductions. So, yep, I'll start. My name is Miles Fisher, Head of IT Solutions for Global 4. I've met some of you, but not all, admittedly. So I've been with the business for about 2 years, coming up to about 15 years in the industry. So here, for any of you that would wish to contact after, whether it's about Copilot or the other services we provide, I'm delighted to say that we're joined today by a Microsoft MVP. So, Chris, over to you, perhaps for a quick introduction.
Yeah. Hey, what's up, everyone? Really good to have you here, and happy Tuesday. Hopefully, you're ready to rock and roll. And yes, I'm Director of Innovation at a company called ANS. So I get to run around and tell everyone why AI and low code are more important than oxygen. So that's me.
Thanks, Chris. Yeah, very strategic partner in ANS. So ANS are our partner for digital transformation and everything wonderful that entails. Obviously, the topic of today's conversation is AI, and in particular Copilot. So really great to have these guys on board. So far as the agenda goes, we've obviously got some points we want to cover here. I guess we start by saying, well, it's here, isn't it? We're no longer talking about AI and Copilot. It's amongst us. Seems to be doing well for Microsoft. I think if you look at their latest share price, up by 55%, which is lovely for them. We know they need every penny they can get. I think they're also tracking to receive another 8 billion of revenue from Copilot and sort of associated products, which is wonderful. Of course, the point of interest is what can it do for everyone here? Global 4 are no different. We're looking to leverage this, and I'm sure everybody here is at different stages of the journey. So far as an agenda goes, these are really sort of points we want to cover off. Is an introduction to Copilot, live demonstration, the bit we're all looking forward to, and a bit of showing off and including this low-code development, which is for some a bit of a new concept. Lessons learned. So we are at different stages, or our customers are at different stages of the journey with us, so we can share with you a little bit about some of the gotchas. What's caught people out, how to prepare for rollout. You'll see a sort of underlying theme of this event today is what we would look to do or try to do is to help you understand what are the things, those areas that you need to think about before rolling out Copilot. It could be training, it could be technical prerequisites, it could be policy, all these things. So at the end of this session, we've got some information to share with you, because ultimately it's about understanding what those next steps could look like. Q&A, of course, and closing thoughts from us. So that's what we're looking to achieve. Good news is I get to hand over to Chris and run through some of the content from here. I can see there's still people joining. So for anyone that's turning up and just hearing me rattle on now, this is the agenda we're looking to cover through. And good news is you haven't missed anything. I think it's only fair, Chris, if I hand over to you and we can take it from there.
Yeah, awesome. Thank you, Miles. Okay. So this is going to be a little bit of a whirlwind. I recognize some of the names in the chat, and some of you I've seen, I think, on calls before, some of you not. So for what's about to happen, buckle up, right? Anyway, we're going to talk a little bit about an intro into Copilot, and there's a couple of things I want to demystify as well, right? Now, first things first, real quick, is we have a Q&A in the chat section, I believe. So if you need to ask questions, I think they can be approved through the session. So I'll keep an eye on what's going on here. So just to let you know, I've got 2 screens. I've got one with you all on and one with the presentation. Okay. And there will be lots of very live demos. I'm going to tell you right now, the demos are not prepped demos. And the reason is because you need to see what this is like in an everyday scenario. Okay. Now, a couple of things. A lot of you on this call will have heard of ChatGPT. Okay. Which is cool. And a lot of you will have gone onto the OpenAI website and written a poem like a pirate at some point, or done something crazy like that. That's all very good and well. But actually, it's an incredibly powerful tool. Okay. The other thing is that I want you to take a guess, right? Like just kind of think in your head, how long did it take ChatGPT to become, or OpenAI at least, to become the most widely used site on the internet, on the public-facing internet? Okay. It was around 2 weeks, which is wild. That is absolutely wild. So they released this site, and compared to a lot of the other very popular providers, not from an AI perspective, but just social media and all of that, it became incredibly popular really quickly. Now, there's a couple of reasons for that, and actually I'm going to walk you through some of those reasons today. But it's important for you to understand that this is going to revolutionize the way we work. Okay. Copilot is a byproduct of this whole thing. Now, I want to give you a heads up. I've been through the ringer on this stuff. So I actually used to work at Microsoft a number of years back, and I always make the joke, how do you know when somebody worked at Microsoft? Because they'll tell you. Okay. So it was some time back. I work directly with a number of the product groups as well inside Microsoft right now. I'm also a fast track recognized solution architect in Power Platform, which means that I get to talk to the people working hands-on with the product a lot, right? And we're going to make some correlations between low code and Copilot/AI. But it's quite interesting to see how this product's kind of diversified and changed the way we work. Okay. So let's just think about this concept of Gen AI, right? So generative AI is a form of artificial intelligence. And really what it does is it gives you the ability to create new content based on input data. So it uses a thing called vector matching in the background and a bunch of other really interesting technical things that I won't bring up on this call right now. But effectively, what it really does, right, is it gives you the tools to kind of build things from nothing or very small pieces of information. So my favorite one is things like when you go into Microsoft Designer and you type in, create me a picture of a fire-breathing Ewok, it'll do that, right? But you're putting information in and it's transmogrifying that information to something that's real, okay? So GPT is effectively a generative pre-trained transformer, and it's a type of large language model, okay? Which is really good, right? So it's able to take that content and transform it into something far bigger and far more interesting and real, okay? And that's actually what we're seeing today in things like Bing Chat Enterprise and all of that. Now, there's a couple of things I want to demystify. The first thing is this. Microsoft have released this thing called Copilot. Now, that's wonderful. We all love this concept called Copilot, but actually, there are two types of Copilots that have been released, and I'm going to demo these to you. Okay, the first one, and I don't come up with the names, so you're not allowed to give me any trouble. Microsoft Copilot for Microsoft 365. This is brought to you by the same people that named something Teams. Okay. Anyway, Microsoft Copilot for Microsoft 365. Now, the reason they've done that is because, yes, there are other products like Salesforce who have a tool called Copilot. So it's Microsoft Copilot. And their flagship product for Microsoft 365 is effectively a Copilot, and I'll talk to you about what that is very shortly, that is embedded within the Microsoft products. Okay, so it's kind of welded into the product set, which is really cool. And what it does is it uses these generative pre-trained transformers or LLMs to kind of change the way we work and optimize the way we work. Okay, so this is a paid for product. It is effectively, I think the license now is for Pro, it's like $30 or $20 a month. I can't remember per user, but it's really cool, right? It gives you a lot of really great functionality. So that is the flagship product. The second type of copilots is what you call in-product copilots. And these are extremely important, right? Because a lot of people think that Microsoft 365 Copilot is these other copilots, but it's not, okay? So Bing Chat Enterprise is not Microsoft 365 Copilot. It is a Copilot welded into the Bing Chat functionality, okay? Power Apps Copilot is a Copilot welded into that tool set. So it's really important that you understand that, okay? Now, Microsoft Copilot for Microsoft 365 is a paid-for product. Most of the embedded copilots are not. GitHub Copilot is, you need to buy that, okay, for obvious reasons. There is sometimes a fee on top of Bing Chat Enterprise Copilot because it's not necessarily welded into your Office license, but the rest of the tools are welded in products, okay, so they're bolted into the products. So it's really interesting. So those are the first two things you need to understand, okay? Now, I'm about to get extremely nerdy, and I hope everyone's okay with that. Now, I'm going to talk to you a little bit about Microsoft Copilot for Microsoft 365. Now, what's important here, okay, is that Microsoft 365 Copilot doesn't just access content within your Microsoft 365 tenant. That's not what it's about, right? It can, but the most important thing is it accesses contextual content. Now, this is something you need to be extremely highly aware of, okay? So what it will do is, as an example, let's pick Miles uses Copilot, right? And he uses Copilot to write some of his emails, but also Miles generates documents with his Copilot as well, okay, which is really cool. Now, what's interesting is because Copilot understands the context in which Miles works, okay, it knows he uses a certain type of language. It knows that these are the last 10 documents he created. It also knows that these are the last 15 emails he wrote. Now, here's the thing. A lot of you are going, oh, wow, okay, that's really creepy. Absolutely, but it doesn't do anything M365 can't do already through things like semantic search, okay? What it does is it uses existing content within the tenants, right? So if your documentation is already shared, all Copilot for Microsoft 365 does is acts like a loudhailer for it. So that doesn't mean it gives people any extra access than you or them already have. And I will get to the cultural change in that very shortly. But it's super important for you to understand that it uses the Microsoft graph, okay? It is very reliant on that contextual data that you currently already generate in your tenants. Something else that's very important is that you are generating that data already. That's not magically happening. It's always happened, okay? Every email you read, every Teams message you put in is generating data inside a Microsoft 365 tenant. That's happening, all right? So it leverages that data. And what it does is it's able to look at the large language model, look at the inputs, look at the contextual data, and come out with something that's relevant to you, okay, which is super cool. Now, a couple of other things. There have been more than 150 Copilots that have been released in products since Microsoft Build last year. It actually went up and then it went down, and now it's probably going up again. But Copilots are going to be stock standard within pretty much anything you use, okay? If all of you in 2 years' time are still manually writing emails, we fundamentally failed, okay? In fact, in 2 years' time, this is going to be a bit like autocorrect. We're not going to be thinking about the fact that we should be writing emails from scratch. We're going to be naturally snapping into that contextual data and the information you've already been generating, okay? So do you remember that autocorrect on your phones, you could turn it on and off? Now it's on by nature. I want you to think about what's going to happen with Copilots and in-product Copilots, okay? Right now, there's a toggle. Think about what will happen in the future. So there's been over 150 of them that have been generated, which is extremely exciting. But what I want you to quickly think about is this, right? A lot of folks that we talk to, they have this kind of concept that AI is going to take over the world, and my toaster is going to come to life and start making pancakes for me immediately, and it's going to eliminate the job of every human on the planet. Go and do yourself a favor and go and research the Amazon robots that they have in the warehouses. They're quite incredibly bad, okay? So robotics is a different thing. So it's really important for you to understand that a lot of people have this misconception that AI is going to take over the world. Artists won't be writing songs anymore. That's not the case, okay? But I want to show you something. And to any of you that understand low code as well, some of you might have heard of Power Platform. If you haven't, that is not good because you are under a rock. You need to be reading this stuff because it is definitely not new, okay? So what happened many years ago in 2015 is many vendors came out with this concept of low code, and apparently it was going to take all developers' jobs. No, we need more developers. Apparently AI is going to take everyone's jobs. That won't be the case. And I want to backtrack in some time in history. I'm hoping that you're going to get the audio with this. I am sharing audio. But this was an advertisement released for Microsoft Excel. I think it was in around 1997 when Excel was going to take all accountants' jobs. So I'll skip through some of these sections, but it's really quite funny, okay? Also, I would never have a hairdo like this, ever. So let's see if it'll play. Come on. One second. I might have to drag my other screen over to give you guys a quick peek as to how hilarious this is. 1 second, sorry folks. Give it one more go, and if that doesn't work, we will move swiftly on. So there we go. Okay. Nope, it is not playing. Okay, anyway, I'll walk you through what actually happens in the video and I'll drop the link into the chat. But what's really funny is that in this actual video, right, this guy's standing in an elevator and he's got this really large laptop and he's basically building a spreadsheet from scratch. And it's really funny because he's creating these columns, and this guy holding the laptop is basically saying to him, hey, man, this is impossible. We've got to get up to like floor 60, and you'll never be able to build the spreadsheet in time. And actually, he builds the spreadsheet in time. And by the time he gets to the office, his manager's office, they've got this amazing spreadsheet with lots of columns. And everyone's really well impressed. And he's really excited at the fact that he's done this. Now, what's interesting is that when these ads were released, there was a whole thing around accountants freaking out because AI was going to take their, Excel was going to take their jobs. And I hate to break it to you, but we still have lots of accountants and they're still extraordinarily relevant. Okay. And it was the same with low code when it was going to take all developers' jobs, right? So what's happened is that there's been a shift in technology. And I want to give you a little bit of an example here. And I love doing this one keynote. It's called the transformation of digital transformation. So I'm going to give you a snippet into that. All right. But many years ago, when we first started farming, what would happen is that people would farm and they would go to the river, they would take a bucket and they would go and water their crops. And I promise this has relevance. And as kind of society progressed, what happened is there were horse-drawn carts, and we used to load the water onto the horse-drawn cart and take that to the fields and go and water our crops. And people learned and got better at doing this. And as we got more advanced, people dug canals through the fields and took the water to the crops. Okay. And as we got more and more advanced and more developed, people actually figured out that, hey, we can make these things called pipes, and we can run irrigation systems through our farms, and we can actually water the crops a bit more automatically. So there was more learning, more shifting left. And as the years progressed, actually, we've got these amazingly sophisticated irrigation mechanisms for farming. Now, unfortunately, the person watering the crops with a bucket, his job was not taken away. He just did some learning. Okay. And that was pretty important. We just changed the way we did things, and so have all of you. Do you remember when search came out? So I remember in 1996, I was sitting at school, I'm giving my age away, and this thing called Google search was released. It was 95 and 96. And I remember my librarian panicking, thinking that she no longer had a role. And, we should burn the encyclopedias type of thing. But that wasn't the case, right? It's just different. We look at information differently. We search for information differently. Now, the one thing I want to tell you is that AI and Copilot in general will become a bit like spell checker in Microsoft Word, okay? Spell checker just happens to you. It didn't before. You had to spell check your document and go, I need to do this thing to make sure I spell correctly. Now it just naturally happens. So AI is not going to take your job. People that know AI will take your job. And that's really important to understand. So people that reason and learn how to use technology extremely quickly have an advantage over others. You're probably going to yell at me and say that's not digital equity, but that is, because it's up to people to learn. It is up to you to pick up a book. It's up to you to go and learn this. And I will give you links at the end of this presentation and things to read. Okay. I've had to do it. Everyone's had to do it, but it's well worth understanding. So an important point to make here is that this is a co-pilot, not an autopilot. It's not going to magically do everything for you. And I'm going to demo this to you. It's not going to magically go and, do your entire job for you. In the European legislation around AI, this wasn't the one signed at Bletchley Park. This was the recent one. That was just an agreement at Bletchley. They actually stipulated that every output from artificial intelligence must have a human interaction. Okay. There's this ridiculous video of this dude driving a car with a VR headset on in the States. And that's wild, right? Like, what are people actually thinking? This is not going to do everything for you. Okay. You need to take responsibility for your data and for the outputs of the artificial intelligence. Okay. So in talking to my pals at Microsoft, there's some things that you're going to need to learn around Copilot in specific. And actually, these are quite cool. So we call it the 3 pillars, right? The 3 pillars of understanding artificial intelligence, and in this particular case, Microsoft Copilot, is the first one is adopt. Okay. So for all of you on the call right now, regardless of extend and build, you will need to start adopting this. This is not going to be a thing of maybe we should do it. This is going to happen with you or to you. Okay. So it's your choice. If it happens to you, fine. Then you're going to have to wait a couple of years and eventually the stuff will be on by default. but happening with you is way better because then you can learn to adopt. You can learn to change the culture within your organization. And we've had to do it at ANS. And I know at Global 4, they've had to do it as well. It's not a thing of, oh, turn on the co-pilots and everyone have a wonderful time. Absolutely not. There's an adoption program you need to go through and going when doing this, right? So my advice is don't just turn everything on, just get ready. Okay, so adoption is really key. The second one is extending it. So you can actually extend Copilot, right? You can extend the functionality to do what you want. As an example, we have an organization using a tool called iManage. iManage stores a lot of their M365, the data that would normally be in Microsoft 365. We'll extend Microsoft 365 Copilot to talk to iManage, a third-party provider, to reason over that documentation. And then finally, build. You can build your own Copilots from scratch. And I'm going to build you one today. Okay, which is quite wild because you don't need Microsoft 365 Copilot to build your own Copilots, which is pretty cool. So you can have these like siloed little Copilots on top of data and reason over that data without paying for a big license for your whole company. So yeah, those are the things I'm going to walk you through. But the main one is around adoption, right? And this, as I said, is really important. Now, some of you may know this, some of you may not, but the new art of talking to AI is called prompting. Okay, and prompting is really important. And I'm gonna give you a little peek at something. I think one of the best places to learn to prompt is using Bing Chat Enterprise. Okay, so what I'm gonna do is, Miles, just give me a thumbs up if you can see that, the demo screen. Yeah, cool. So over here in Microsoft Bing, you've got this thing called Copilot, right? And that's embedded over there. And what your Copilot will do is it actually asks you to, you can ask it to do certain things. Now, this is reasoning over data from the internet. This is not your internal data, okay? This is external data. Please note, internal data is different to external data. I'm reasoning over external data. So I can say, show me everything. Actually, let me do a better one, right? So, what are you? So let's ask it. Let's interview Copilot. So what are you? I'm a machine, not a human, but AI, blah, 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 blah. So you can actually see this typing kind of concepts over here. What this is doing is it's looking to the large language model and generating the next best word. Okay. So let's ask it, will you take my job? So I'm prompting, I'm asking it questions. So it's kind of like talking to my colleague, right? As an AI, I'm designed to assist you with augment human capabilities, blah, blah, blah. This actually will grow and learn as you go. But I remember I asked it one time, I said, will you take my job? And it actually just shut me down like my ex-girlfriend, just done. So what's important is that you've got to learn to talk to the AI. Another fun way to learn this is through tools like Microsoft Designer. Okay, whoops. So if you just go to, I figured out where it is now. Microsoft Designer, you can actually start building images, right? And this will actually use the functionality in the LLM to create you images. Super easy to try out your prompting skills. So if I want to get started with generative AI, I can actually ask Microsoft Designer, create a pic, of create me a pic of a badger in the snow. And it's going to look at your prompt and it's going to generate an actual image. So I'm using this to practice. This is not something, I use this for slides quite a lot, but actually what's really good is that the prompting functionality, learning how to prompt, is going to be one of the most important things all of you on this call need to do in the next few years, is get used to talking to AI and get used to prompting. There's a little picture of a badger in the snow, okay? So prompting is really important, but actually it's one of the most key skills. And there's a role come out called a prompt engineer who actually designs prompts. And a prompt is not only one sentence, it can be extremely complicated, okay? And I'm going to show you some very basic prompts, but the prompting of the AI is really important. What we're also finding is that internally at the organizations we're working with, centralized prompt libraries are really key. So like, how do you reuse those prompts when looking at artificial intelligence and Copilot? So what I'm going to do is using some prompts. I'm gonna do a cool demo called taking the robot out of the human, right? And what's really cool for me is that I don't have to do things, I don't have to spend time on making as much content as I did before. Okay, so I'm taking the robot out of the human. I'm removing the jobs that I don't want to do, right? So what I'm going to do is I'm going to quickly chuck my screen over there, and I've got Microsoft 365 Copilot open over here. Okay, and you can see I've got a list of my prompts that I've been using quite recently. So Microsoft 365 Copilot, I'm going to say summarize my last 15 emails. Okay, so what it's going to do, this is using the graph. It's going to go and look at my emails and actually summarize the last 15 for me. My context, not Miles's context, mine. Okay, what I can do if I really want to, oh, there we go. So you can see it's listing them out here. I can go and click on the links and actually get access to those emails. Okay, so I don't need to worry about, re-summarizing. But if I want to, I can say summarize, and I'm going to attach a user. I'm going to attach a person. So we're going to summarize user 10's last 15 emails. Some of you all are panicking on the call right now because you're like, oh no, are people going to be summarizing my emails? And watch what it's going to do. It's going to look, and it's not going to be very stoked with me. Hopefully Copilot hasn't changed. I'm sorry I couldn't find the information. So it's looking at the graph. It's saying, okay, Chris, I'm not going to summarize this for you because this is somebody else's contextual information. Let me show you another thing. Find me documentation about budgets. So I'm going to look for budget information, right? And this is across my entire tenant. Now, you can do this in Microsoft Search. You probably just haven't tried, but it's looking for documentation about budgets. This is where things start getting a little wild. I'm going to say, whoops, all documents. So I'm talking to the AI. I'm interacting with the Copilot, right? And what it's actually going to do is it's going to go and scrape my tenant for all information about budgets. Things will get a little weird, right? So super secret budget overrun in an Excel file authorized by user 30. So this user has actually shared this document with me, okay? They don't know it. They've gone into M365 and done a simple share all to the documents. So ask yourself this question. The documentation you have in your organization, okay, watch this. If you simply click on that button over there and you say share, and you do what every other company does, right? Because all of you all are guilty of this, and you just say people in my business, guess what? That's going to show up in Copilot, okay? If you don't have your sensitivity label set up and your contextual information set up, people will find the stuff. Watch this one. Okay, so this is what you call a secret search, right? So we do this in all orgs when we trial this out. We go and look for stuff in their tenants. Now you can actually do this with Microsoft Search, but what Copilot does is it acts as a loud hailer for terrible data. Okay, so you can see I've actually gone and shared this PDF file with people, and I can tell you that there are passwords in this. Okay, that is not good. That, my friends, is a data breach. Okay, so what Copilot does is anyone can find this document in your tenant at any given time if you don't have things like Purview set up and your security set up. So it's really important to make sure this stuff is all set up correctly so that when people start using M365 Copilot, they aren't confused with bad information. I'm going to give you one more quick peek. Okay, let's say an embedded Copilot inside Microsoft Word. So Miles, I hope you don't mind, man. I'm going to be a little bit lazy. I was actually thinking, dude, can I write you an AI adoption strategy quickly?
I'd love to see it, Chris. Please go ahead.
No worries, no worries. So write me a Copilot listing the top 10 things I need to do. Do this in a formal, legal, that is a prompt. So write me an adoption strategy listing, write me a Copilot. Let's just make sure we're specific. We must always be specific. Copilot adoption, TION. So it's not too hazardous about spelling. Do this in a legal format that is easy to read. Now I can actually add in other documents to reference. So if you're a legal firm, you can add in other contracts that it'll reference as long as they're shared with you. And what I'm going to do is I'm just going to roll up my sleeves and I'm going to let this thing do its thing, right? So as we say, nothing up the sleeves. This is actually going to run in the background, but it's going to start generating this information. This is internal data in your tenant. This is not looking at the internet, okay? What happens is when you enable Copilot, that LLM gets copied into your tenant, that large language model, and it will use that to build information. So here we go. It's writing the thing for me, right? I'm very excited about not having to ever do this again, by the way. Makes me extremely happy. I can spend more time talking to Miles and nerding out about actual tech rather than writing documents that, only like 5 people will read. But there we go. It's building it out for me. I can fire this over to Miles anytime I want. But what I will do is I will review it first and make sure that I'm extremely happy with the content. Because if I'm not, well, then there'll be trouble. So you can't just generate a document and not read it. You must read it. Okay. I love the share and celebrate your success with your achievements from Copilot. That's my favorite part. So there's my doc. What I'll do is I can download it. And yeah, I'm happy to email this to all of you for free. Okay. So there we go. Generated a strategy document using Microsoft Word by typing in one prompt. Normally, this would take me about 4 to 5 hours to just review and read. Okay. So that is taking the robot out of the human. To do one last little thing, which is incredibly hilarious, but if you really want to, you can chuck it into things like PowerPoint. I despise building slides purely because they look terrible most of the time. But very, very simply, using the Copilot inside PowerPoint, when it loads, I can say, make me a slide deck that talks about ProSci change management and stakeholder management. Cool. In tenant, you can ask it to look outside, but it won't. Okay. So ultimately, this is in tenant. You can make a presentation from another file. You can start adding single slides, but this will actually generate the content for me. Now, you've got to remember, it's not always going to be perfect. So it's going to give you a good base to work from. But these in-product copilots within M365 are extraordinarily valuable. Look at that. Look at that GIF, hey? Hey, little video. Wonderful. There we go. The ad car model, stakeholder analysis, change management plan, all done, right? So there we go. I'll give that to you for free as well. But those are just 2 copilots that we work with directly inside the tool sets. Okay, and here's my terrible slide deck that shouldn't have passwords in it. Now, as you can see, it's extraordinarily powerful. You can use it to do a lot of amazing things, especially in Microsoft Teams. So summarize meetings for me, do X, Y, and Z with the transcription. Okay, but it's important that you have your data sensitivity labeling set up, your data policies set up in Purview, and you know exactly kind of what data is being shared and where. So if you have a M365 ecosystem with data all over the place and you don't know what's where and where is what, you're going to have some problems setting this up. So you should sort that out. But I'll show you what to do. Don't worry. Anyway, so that's the Microsoft 365 Copilot functionality. I decided to show you those couple of things. I wanted to show you an extremely quick in-product Copilot. So some of you that might understand what Power Platform is, this is a tool set that is low code and lets me build applications and automations kind of from scratch, right? So I'm going to ask it to make me an app. Now, what I'm going to do is I'm going to ask it to build me an inspections application, right? So please always be kind to the AI so when it comes to life, it doesn't attack you. So please build me an app that will let me do buildings inspections. Okay, simple prompt, what it's going to go do. It's going to go generate the data structure in the background for me with some sample data. So it'll go create a table in a tool called Dataverse, which is a cloud-based relational data storage facility. No, it's not SQL. It's a storage facility on top of a bunch of other ones. So there's my little table over there. And I'm going to go ahead and create the app. Now, this would normally take a developer a few hours to get right from scratch. I'm simply making it in front of you and hoping for the very best. Okay. Now, what's wild is that this is an in-product Copilot. When you buy Power Platform, you get this for free. Okay, nothing's for free. If it's free, you're the product. But ultimately, it is part of the package that you purchase. Okay. And what's quite cool is that you can actually see it's building it in front of you. I'm literally just letting it ride. You can do this with automations as well. And what will eventually happen is it'll actually build me a responsive app that I can go and share with the rest of my business, right? Immediate productionization, if that's the word. There we go. There's my little app. I'm going to run it. Cool. Pretty sick, right? And I can go and change the screen size. There we go. It's made me a completely responsive application that I can publish internally. These are not external. That I can publish internally and share with my business. So far, all I've done is I've shown you the internal workings of Microsoft 365 Copilot. So I've shown you some data sharing stuff. What I've also shown you is Microsoft Word with Copilot embedded, Microsoft 365 Copilot. I've shown you PowerPoint with Microsoft 365 Copilot, then an in-product Copilot inside the tool called Power Platform, which is the low-code tool that Microsoft use. Okay, so that's pretty wild. Inside Microsoft 365 Copilot, you can actually manage your prompts. So you can go ahead and view the different prompts that you've saved, and you can also go to a thing called Copilot Lab, where you can create your own prompt libraries, which is pretty wild as well. So you can create your own prompts and share them with your friends. In our company, at ANS, we share prompts. We get very excited when somebody makes something cool. So right now we are sharing prompts about creating Funko Pop squirrels. It's a very long story. Go and look on the internet. You will find it. Anyway, it is what it is, right? So that is effectively the Microsoft 365 Copilot stuff I wanted to show you. The next stuff gets a little bit more wild, okay? And that's actually about building your own Copilots from scratch. Now this, my friends, is an immediate win, and I'm going to give you homework. I'm hoping that you will all go and try this at home or at school or at work or wherever you are, okay? And we're going to build our own custom Copilot. Now, I want to tell you a bit of a story. That is using the Power Platform functionality. So if you've ever seen this diagram before, this is Microsoft's Power Platform. The Power Platform comes from multiple areas of the Microsoft stack. So things like Yellow Excel, which you know is Power BI, have all been around for a very long time. They've just been democratized in a tool set that is okay for citizen developers to use, or people that don't necessarily have tech experience. And recently, Microsoft released this thing called the Copilot Studio. It was previously called Power Virtual Agents, but Copilot Studio sounds way cooler. Okay, so I'm going to show you this thing, and I'm actually going to build you a Copilot from scratch. Now, I love this because I actually used this live, and I'm going to show you the live use case I actually used it for. Okay, so the use case I used it for, and this is me. I want you to think about this in your business. I study planetary sciences through the University of Birkbeck. So one of the subjects I study is astrobiology. Okay, and let me tell you, it's super complicated, right? And the lectures are intense. So I'm going to give you a quick example, right? So if you can imagine this is your HR documentation or internal information that lives inside your org, you can check that this stuff gets really weird, right? And really, really, really intense. There's a thing called the Arecibo message, which was generated many years ago through SETI. There's a bunch of stuff that they talk about a thing called the Fermi paradox. So I had to learn all of this, right? And I will tell you I passed the exam, which I'm super stoked about. But it's really complicated stuff. Now, I could search the documentation through Microsoft Search, but actually I needed a way to kind of reason over that data and give me bits of information that were relevant to me at the time, and I wanted to ask it questions. So what I did is I built my own Copilot, and you can do this right now. Okay, this call is recorded for quality purposes. So if you go into Power Platform, right, and you select your environment, okay, and you go to a thing called chatbots, which they will rebrand, by the way, I promise. You can see I've made lots of Copilots, right? I made one on the Harrods website. I made one for the BBC, but I made an astrobiology Copilot. And all I did, I'm going to build it for you from scratch. All I did was I simply grabbed the site URL, okay? New chatbot. Let's give it a sec to load. It's going to give me a wondrous welcome message. And all I'm going to do is I'm going to pop in there. I'm going to call it Astrobot V6. You can have multiple languages. So that's the answer to the question that will get asked. So English is right now, but there are other languages you can choose from, and you can have multiple languages selected per chatbot or per Copilot. And all I've done is I'm building my Copilot. Now, your websites, my friends, if you do not have a chatbot on your website, this is a way to do it really quickly. So you can actually embed a custom Copilot in your website to reason over your data straight away, right? This will take you 5 minutes to make on top of your website. So here's my astrobiology bot. It will learn my data, so it may not answer me straight away. So I'm going to say, tell me about the Fermi paradox. Okay. Hopefully, it does take sometimes a little bit of time to pick up the information, but let's see how fast it's being today. And my astrobot will go and tell me, hopefully, some information about the Fermi paradox and where to get the information from. And I can ask it questions as well. So it uses AI, which is the large language model in the background, that lets me reason over that data. So here's all the information about the Fermi paradox. It's telling me what lectures to go in. So I'll quickly pop into that lecture, and it's taking me exactly to the place I need to go with the information. I can actually ask it questions. I took it one step further. So I actually embedded the Copilot on the main page in my SharePoint site. So I decided, hey, what I'm going to do is I'm just going to embed the Copilot. So I'm going to say, tell about the Fermi paradox. And there you go. It'll do the exact same thing. That Copilot took me less than a minute to make. You can put in your website, you can put in pretty much whatever you want in there, and it will physically look at that data and reason over it. That is wild. I've made you a Copilot in less than a minute. Okay, there it is there. Is there a way to embed a Copilot to a Microsoft list? Are you talking about a Microsoft list that is structured data? My guess is yes, and there are ways to do it, but this looks at unstructured data primarily. Okay, so that's a good question. Anywho, so last little bit, right? I want to tell you, if you are a Power Platform person, congratulations, you are now an AI extensibility expert. Go and put that on your CV, update your LinkedIn, ask your boss for a raise. Okay. So last couple of things is what we are seeing in the market is that we need to be transparent about the data we're using, and it needs to be made accessible, right? So the whole goal is to get value from data. But the 5 key things that we are finding with organizations is number one, okay, culture and adoption. It will not work if you do not drive change and enablement in your company. Number two, if your data is terrible, the Copilot's going to be terrible. Sorry, there's a thing that goes S in, S out. You can figure out the word yourself, but it's really important for you to know that if you have bad data, especially structured data, when you're building Copilots, you can cause a bit of trouble with that. Security is paramount and key. If your security is bad, people are going to see what you've shared with them. It's like that already, right? So you got to go and figure out your security. You got to go and figure out what's going on under the hood. Ethical and responsible usage of AI. Let me tell you something. Profiling people with AI is not okay. Okay. I can tell you some horror stories, not on this call, but I've seen some pretty damn interesting things. So please understand ethical usage is important. And I call it the cupcake theory. You know, when you walk past the table and you see a cupcake on it and you think like, maybe taking the cupcake isn't such a good idea. It's probably not a good idea. If you feel like that with AI and Copilot, don't do it. Okay, it's that simple. And then finally, guardrails. You've got to get them guardrails up. Things like setting up a data strategy, getting Purview installed. I promise you, I'm giving a lot of you hints here. Purview. Probably the most important set of tools you will ever use in the next year. Okay, ensuring that your data is looked after inside Microsoft 365. Data loss prevention is going to be important. A couple of things I really want you to think about is number one, follow this lady, Donna Sarker. So she leads AI extensibility for Microsoft, and she owns the Copilots. So that's her role. Imagine corralling 155 Copilots. That's like 155 toddlers in your house. Wonderful, right? And they go wild. So that's her role. But there are some really interesting things that are happening with tech right now. And one of them is called invisible AI. And that's when AI happens to you. It doesn't happen with you. Okay. So that's really important. But it's also important to know that you can extend AI through things like building your own prompt libraries, like my buddy Mike Gowland and John Russell did internally at ANS. They built their own prompt library. They built their own tool to register prompts and actually help you through prompting. Last few things. The key thing here is that with AI and Copilot, building the Copilots is the easy part. It's setting up your ecosystem to make sure that your Copilots are looked after and enabling your staff. So we're doing a deployment right now with an organization, they're a legal firm. Building the Copilots is nothing. That's the easy part, right? It's getting the guardrails in and making sure that we teach everyone how to use them, which is important. And actually, we've listed the stuff here that you need to be looking at. So things like center of enablement, right? Like a lot of people call it center of excellence or center of awesome or center of enthusiasm, whatever. But the whole idea is driving business productivity in your organization. So that center of enablement is really key, but also teaching people how to use Copilot and why to use Copilot, okay? There's no point in Copiloting for nothing. So I have a couple of things for you to do, right? The first one is this. Your takeaway is number one, understand where you are in your Copilot journey. Guess what? We're all in the beginning. If anyone says they're not, they're lying, right? Because I don't think anyone is experienced in Copilot, except for maybe one or two extremely large organizations who had big, shiny bucket loads of money to buy 300 licenses straight off the bat, okay? Number two, get your guardrails in place. Purview. Every one of you on this call now needs to go and learn Purview, okay? Number 3, figure out your purpose. Why are you co-piloting? But you've got to dare to do. This is not a case in point of sitting back. And I always say, like, don't let the AI happen to you, right? Let it happen with you. So now you're on this call for a reason. Let's work together to do it. And your homework, and yes, homework is happening. It absolutely is happening. Start learning prompting. Okay, I've given you a list of things to do over here, right? Start learning prompting. Very important. I believe the era of apps is over. We're in the era of conversational UX, right? So people are going to start wanting to use conversational UX over the app. Attend events. So well done. You've done your first part of your homework. Second part. Congratulations. You're at an event. Go to more. Go learn more. And then finally, figure out your niche. So some of you may be technical people, some of you may not be, but it's important for you to understand that you will have a niche in this whole thing. My niche, I'm kick-ass at building copilots, right? I'm not a brilliant prompter, but I know how to make copilots. So that's my niche. Find your niche, okay? So I've sent some links. Hopefully this all makes sense. You're more than welcome to give these a go. These people are wonderful. So my friend William Dorrington, I recommend you hitting up this prompt engineering course. He's absolutely brilliant. So this is the first one I would do. Okay. And last thing, I just wanted to say thank you all very much before I hand back to Miles. If you want to hit me up on Twitter or LinkedIn, please feel free to do that. But I'd love to chat. If you just want to geek out and learn more about what's happening with this technology, you're more than welcome. But yeah, Miles, thank you for having me into the Global 4 team. You guys are absolute legends. And to all 500,000 of you that joined this event, thank you so very much for coming along. I know it's been fast. I did warn you it was going to be a whirlwind, but there's a lot to get through. Okay, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to open up for questions. Is that right, Miles?
Yeah, let's do that, Chris. And if that's all right, first, what I'd like to say is also thank you. You had a heck of a lot of run through there in a relatively short space of time. I think we wear a few hats in our job, and one of those hats we wear and one of the jobs we have is to take the hyper excitable, high-level corporate speak from Microsoft about new products and actually get under the skin of it. So I'm speaking for myself and also probably quite a few people here to say it's unbelievably refreshing the way in which you deliver the content. So thank you, firstly, from all of us here. We do have some Q&A. I think as well, just to summarize before we do that, and some closing thoughts. Chris, you've done the hard work for me. So how to approach the next steps. There's a lot of links within this presentation. What we've also done for you is put together what we refer to as a Copilot preparation checklist. So there are pillars within there. Like analysis and building certainty and understanding, end user engagement, compliance and rules of engagement. So things within there that we would obviously encourage you to think about. Some of them are technical, and I think we recognize, and a lot of the customers we talk to recognize, oversharing is a thing whether we like it or not. And I think if we were to ask the question of those responsible for IT and data management, how sure are you that people only have access to the right information that they should do, whether it's SharePoint, OneDrive, and other mechanisms. Within those files, is there information there that probably shouldn't be there? So we've all heard examples of and horror stories of, if I've got access to the wrong information, I can ask Copilot to go find me my CEO's salary, or the example that Chris has given around passwords being there that shouldn't be. So have a look at this list. There's probably things in there you perhaps haven't thought about. For example, things like policy. We all think about policies that we need to have as organizations. I think invariably there's going to need to be policy written around the use of AI. What are the boundaries? What are the rules? What can and can't you do with it? Your users are going to be looking and expecting that kind of guidance. Otherwise, as Chris has already pointed out, they're going to run away with it, and this is going to happen around you. So please come to us if you want any further information. There's tools out there to manage things like data sharing. Do you use a Microsoft product? Do you use a third party? There's pros and cons of both. Do you need to outsource some of this, or have you got it under control? So as you read through that, think about those areas that you might need assistance with. Goes without saying, but deciding your champions, and that's going to be the way to really adopt this and drive this forward. That's going to be your leaders, your heads of department. They're going to be the ones that know the role better than you probably could, to understand what are the things that people are doing, likes of AI and Copilot can assist, accelerate, make better. And then think about processes like chatbots. I can't stand chatbots. It's very rare I speak to a chatbot on a website currently and it answers the question I have. Once you understand how the likes of Copilot can take it to the next level, you'll be quite impressed. I've put here assess possible alternative solutions. Yes, there are competitors out there. I think what I would encourage here is to look at within your industry, and whatever industry you're in, AI is creating a lot of noise. I've seen some really, really good industry-specific products, whether it's retail, whether it's the property sector. There are lots of third-party products out there that can add to the experience. So think about other areas that you could obviously could benefit from those industry-specific co-pilots. And yet, the who to approach from information, we've kind of made that point. So those are just some closing thoughts from me. Chris, shall we check the Q&A, see if there's anything in there that hasn't been covered so far? You're on mute at the moment, Chris, if you're talking. I'm not sure if you are.
Oh, I'm so sorry. Yeah, my bad. I was busy reading the Q&A. Yeah, so Terry's asked a great question around like metadata tagging and things. Purview is your friend, right? Like anything structured data-wise, so anything that's not a document, you really want to make sure that you're either driving through Purview if possible. I mean, I believe I've even seen that Dataverse has got a link up there, so you can create your own data maps and things like that. But it's definitely well worth learning the Purview stuff. And then unstructured, you're always going to want to go through the DLP layer / create sensitivity labels and all of that. But what I've found is since they've merged M365 compliance with Azure Purview, the two have come together. It's so powerful, but there's a lot of things in one place. So what we've had to do is we've had to kind of go on this relearning journey where we're kind of picking up other different areas inside Purview. But for technical governance on this, Purview is your friend. Can you embed a Copilot? Can you embed Copilot over a SQL database? You can. There are ways to do it. So you would have to create your own custom Copilot and then reach out to that using the Copilot Studio actions. There are also ways to do it using Azure AI Studio. Okay. So if Copilot Studio doesn't cover what you want to do from a structured data perspective using actions, then Azure AI Studio is your way. But remember, Copilots are very good at understanding large language Copilots are very good at understanding unstructured data. So the first time in history, we understand unstructured data better than we understand structured data right now. But yeah, you can use Azure AI Studio or Copilot Studio. And Copilot Studio, you'll use actions. Azure AI Studio, there are ways to connect to structured data. So those are the two I would go for. That's a great question, by the way. Thank you. Copilot over a Microsoft list, we've already answered. Right. So my suggestion is if you're wanting to experiment, you're definitely going to want to start with Copilot Studio first. That's absolutely the way to do it. When you reach limitations, because you will, then move out into Azure AI Studio and give it a go from there. Cool.
Chris, thank you. I can't see any other questions at the moment. People obviously have our details if they want to reach out directly afterwards. And watch your space as well, guys. So this is the first of a series of webinars which we're going to be running this year. If you've been invited to this one, chances are you'll be invited to the next ones as well. So we look forward to having you back for the next one. In the short term, look out for the information from us as promised. And yeah, we'll let you go on the rest of your day. Thanks so much for joining, guys.
Yeah, thank you, everyone. It's been such a pleasure, and we appreciate your time. I know it was a lot, but it's always going to be a lot.
So it should be. Cheers, guys. Goodbye.
See you, everyone.